Hello everyone, my name is Dr. Swami Haridasanath and I have been here in Anand Ashram in Lucknow for about a year. So I took sannyas and a lot of people ask me what sannyas is, ask me why I took sannyas and ask me various spiritual questions. So I've created this channel to try and answer some of these questions. And today I'm going to go on the big topic of God. So let's start with the very essential question, which is, does God exist? Now, this is a very hard question to answer. Lots of philosophers have debated this, and God obviously isn't a topic of argument. God isn't something that we can reason. But just for the moment, let's put that aside and let's focus here on some way that we can think about the existence of God, the way that we can define the existence of God. So if we consider gravity, now gravity, it exists. It always existed. There's a reason why human beings do not float. There's a reason why apples drop from a tree onto the ground. And gravity has always been present. However, it wasn't until Sir Isaac Newton defined the three laws of motion that we could then say that gravity exists. Until then, the idea, the concept of gravity hadn't been defined. And then from that, we could define its properties, its attributes, we could use it to make predictions. And this is the basis of all scientific research, is that we should have laws, observations to define it. Now God, by his very nature, by the fact that he is beyond laws, beyond our limited thinking, means that we cannot understand him, we cannot define him, we cannot prove his existence in the way that science seeks to prove things. But then let's think of it in a different way. Imagine, or maybe you have a friend called Peter. Now this friend of yours, if I asked you, does he exist? You could say, yes, he exists. You could say this because you have seen him, you've talked with him, you can meet him. Then I ask you, then how can you verify this? How can you verify that he exists? And you would say that potentially you have his phone number. You can call him. You could give me his phone number so I could talk to him. Maybe you could set up a meeting so I can meet him. So you can prove the existence of this friend of yours because you have seen him. And you can give that evidence to me via medium of telephone, address, etc. So this is your verification that this friend Peter exists. In the same way, if we say that God exists because I have seen him, I have met him, I talked to him, then my basic and first question should be, then if you can see him, what medium can I talk to him? What medium can I use to see him? I wouldn't simply say that there does not exist a friend of yours called Peter. Now, if I then, let's take this example further. I say, yes, I want to talk to Peter, but I want to fax it. Now you could say that Peter does not have a fax machine. I then say that clearly Peter doesn't exist if he doesn't have a fax machine. Now, of course, this argument is absurd because Peter, in the way that we want to contact him, must be contacted by his very medium. He uses a telephone, so we have to contact him via telephone. However, if God, in the same way, has his medium to be contacted by, his medium to be seen. Now, I can't say that I want to see God in this way or I want to contact God in this way. But I can say that I have seen God and verify him. And if I can say that I've seen God and I can verify it, then I should also be able to tell you how you can see God and how you can verify him. That, I believe, is an essential question of how we could prove, in a personal sense, the existence of God. The second question is that if God does exist, if we have seen God, if he's there, what form would he be in? What shape? How would he look? How can we tell that this God that we are seeing is the God that we have been told about? So firstly, let's take scriptures. So in the Bible, it said that man is made in God's image. So does that mean that God comes in a human form, that God has a human body? God has hair, skin, eyes, nose, mouth, etc. And if God has a human body, does he have the same human nature that we have? Does he have human attributes? So the question that people ask themselves in this line is that if man is made in God's image, then perhaps man and God look alike, which is why you go to places in North India where people are generally very white, very pale. There they would make their statues, their marbles of God in very white marble, because they want to show that their God, who is also going to be of a human form, should be whiter than they are. When you go to South India, where they are very dark skinned, there they will make their statues of black stone, because they say that we are dark and therefore our God should be darker. So here the interesting notion is that God now isn't a presence that defines you. Now we say that God should look like us and not that we look like God. And then let's go into our scriptures a little bit further. In the Bible it said that God is light, within him there is no darkness at all. In the Bhagavad Gita it said Jyotisham apita jyotish, that I am the light of all lights. So then it's referred to that God is light. Now, if God is light, what kind of light? We have street lamps, we have torches. Is God there? Is God that light? But the light that they seem to talk about is a light that is eternal. A torch gets turned on, turned off. A street light gets turned on, turned off. Even the sun, for its brilliance, had a creation and will one day die. So this God, this light that we see, how do we know him? How can we see him? Because light has a powerful and important role in the world. Even the laws of general relativity, E equals mc squared, is defined fundamentally by the speed of light. So let's go on and let's say further, they say that God is love. Now, what is love? Is love a feeling? Now, feelings are temporary. I have a feeling, that feeling ends. But you're now saying that God is eternal. You're saying that God is infinite. But the love that I experience, the love that I know of in this world, is temporary. You have love and then it fades, it grows, it gets destroyed. So how can God be love? Now here our scriptures teach that what we experience in this world isn't true love. I know it sounds controversial, but they say that in this world we have attachments. We become attached. A great example is given in the Ramayana, where Sri Ram sees that this woman's weeping now that her husband has died. And he asks her, why are you weeping? She says, I'm weeping, my husband has died. Now he says that, well, what is your husband? Who is your husband? He said, if your husband is a human body, the human body is there. The human body hasn't gone anywhere, so why are you crying? If you then say that he's a soul, an atma, then by the scriptures we know that that's ever existing, it never dies. So what are you weeping for? And then she understood she wasn't weeping because he died. She's weeping because of her attachment to him. She's weeping because of her connection, her need for him. And now he had gone. She didn't weep for the fact that he had died, because his journey was carrying on. It was how it affected her. And that is what we call attachment. But with God, there is no attachment. There is no bond, because we are always one with him. God is always there, always ever present. We cannot lose God. We cannot have God and then God fades. God is always there. And that's why there's a distinction between the attachment of the world and the love of God. So we've talked about three ideas, and there's probably a lot more forms that we could discuss. But then let's take a second to think about our scriptures. Now, scriptures talk about two forms of God. They talk about Nikarag or Sakar Sarup. They talk about a presence of God that is all-pervading, that exists in everything and everyone. And the second is this Sakar Sarup. This is a form of God that comes within a human body. Now, this is said to be a bridge, a gap that we need. Because the God that He is ever-present, all-knowing, how can we connect with Him? How can this limited human body, this human mind, connect with that infinite, all-present God? But when God comes in a human form, as it said of Sri Ram, Sri Krishna, Jesus, Muhammad, whatever prophet, saint you want to talk about, when they came onto this earth, they were defined as being of the form of God. Now, if we ask on their physical presence, they didn't have 4 arms, they didn't have any indications externally to indicate that they were God. However, those who knew them, those who had spent time with them, even our scriptures then explained that they were God here in a human form, here to guide mankind back towards God, towards that path towards God. So this is an important point here, is that our scriptures teach us that God is light, God is love. And our scriptures teach us that God comes in 2 forms, that He comes in a human body and He's the ever-pervading, all-knowing power that's ever-present. This is also given in the Bible when we talk about the Holy Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. The Father being the ever-pervading, the Son being Jesus, who was here as a way, as a gateway, and then the Spirit, which resides within us, which is one way that we connect with God. So now we've talked about what God looks like. Now, the third question I'll ask is, where is God? Now, some say that God is everywhere. And there's an important distinction here. God is everywhere and God is everything are 2 separate things. When people say that God is everything, then they say that God is the good and the bad. God is the pain and the happiness. And then the question naturally appears that how can there be a God which has this duality? How can there be a God that causes suffering and pain and then also be loving and happy? But in our Bible, it's written that God is light, in Him there is no darkness at all. That God is only one, an absolute of purity. There is no duality in God. So God is in everyone, but God is in everything. The good, the positive, that is God. The negative, the pain, the suffering, that is not God. That is the absence of God. So now that we have this question of where is God, and God is everywhere, then they say that God is in heaven. He's in some realm, in some place, in some location, distant, where it's calm and peaceful and happiness. And then the natural question arises of where heaven is. Is heaven here? Is heaven somewhere else? I won't talk too much about heaven because it's such a overly vague topic. And then the third is that they say that we, the human body, is the living temple of God, that God resides within us. It is why the Indian wears this tilak here to decide that God lives here in this abode. They call it Kasi. That God lives within this body. Now, once somebody asked my guru, they said that, how can God live in this body? He was a surgeon. He says, I have operated in every nook and cranny of this human body, and I have not found any God. To explain this, my guru took a box of matches. And he said that in this box of matches, is there fire? He says, there is. This box of matches can produce fire. They exist in a potential state. But until that match is lit, there is no fire. So there is a technique, a medium by which you can turn that match into fire and you can see the light. In the same way, my Guru explained that God can be seen. God is within you. But to see him, you need the technique. You need the medium by which to see him. Just as we cannot fax Peter, we have to phone him. We also have to use the correct medium to see God, to know where he is, to connect with him. The fourth question is that can God be seen? Can we see God? And I've asked a lot of people this question, and a lot of people say, no, God cannot be seen. But our scriptures, our saints say a very different story. Our saints say God can be seen. In the Bible, it said the pure of heart will see God. In the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna is shown God's divine form by Sri Krishna Bhagavan. We said in our scriptures that God can be seen. Even in the Quran, it is said that koi dur parvat par Allah dara kiyadar. That on koi dur, Muhammad saw Allah, saw God. This is a practical experience that he had. So our scriptures are telling us that God can be seen. And then, what medium? How do we see God? Swami Vivekananda said, if there is a God, we must see him. If there's a soul, we must perceive it. Otherwise, it's better to be an atheist than a hypocrite. Even Yoganath Paramahansa said that God can be seen. So our scriptures say it, our saints say it, but we are certain, we have such conviction that God cannot be seen. And then let's take some moments, take a pause and say, now that our saints or scriptures are saying God can be seen, how can God be seen? If they say God can be seen, they should also give us the medium. In the same way as Peter, to be messaged, we need his phone number. Our scriptures should give us a phone number to God. They should give us some clue, indication of how God can be seen. When asked how can God be seen? Our scriptures, Swami Vivekananda, Yoganath Paramahansa teach one clear message. Swami Vivekananda only saw God once he went to the abode of Sri Ramakrishna Paramahansa, who was his guru, his divine teacher. Yoganath Paramahansa only saw God once he went into the divine audience of Yugdhisthira Giri. In the same way, in the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna only saw God when he had the divine audience of Sri Krishna Bhagavan. In the Bible, it's shown and clearly stated that to see God, to meet God, we need Jesus. So to see God, to meet God, we need a teacher, a guru to guide us. In the past, they've come in the form of Krishna, in Ram, of Jesus, Muhammad. But then how do we see God now? Now, to see God now, we also need a perfect master, a guru, a teacher to show us God. We are fortunate that here we have Ma Ashutosh Shamliji and Baba Ashutosh Shamraji Maharaj, who are showing people God, who've shown me God, who show people the divine light, who to experience that divine love. They have shown people God because they too are God. This is what our scriptures teach us. Our scriptures do not say that Jesus came with many arms or any defining physical features to illustrate that he was the Son of God. That when Krishna came, or when Ram came, or when any saint came, there was nothing about their physical appearance that told you that they were God. But each of them had the ability to show God, to give you that divine experience within yourself. That is what Ma Ashutosh Shamliji does. Yoganand Paramahansa called it Kriya Yoga. Swami Vivekananda called it Raj Yoga. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is called Brahm Gyan. And in the Bible, it's called baptism. Master Shamli gives that same Gyan, that same knowledge, that same baptism that is in all these scriptures. Because all the scriptures teach for one thing, that God can be seen. And to see God, you need a perfect master. You need the Jesus of the time. You need the Krishna of the time, the Ram of the time. Here it is Ma Astor Shamliji and Baba Astor Shambhaji Maharaj, who are now here, the perfect masters, who are giving you, giving me, giving everybody the divine grace to see God, to connect with God, to meet God. And this is all the evidence that is required is to see. Once you have seen, you know. Once you experience, you can say that God can be seen because I have seen. There is no other evidence required, and there's no other evidence, no arguments that can make up, that can satisfy. But once you have seen, once you yourself have gone into those inner recesses and seen that divine light, then you can say that I have seen God. As I say now, in front of all of you, with full conviction that I have seen God, and so can you, with the great divine grace of my Guru Ma Astor Shamliji and Baba Astor Shamliji Maharaj. So today I've talked to you all about God and asked you questions and try to give you answers through our scriptures, through logic. But the truth is, God is not a matter of conversation. No matter how many words I say, how many arguments I give, until you've experienced it, until you have seen for yourself, there is no words that can convince you. You are simply in a state of believing, knowing. That's the start. Once you know God, then your journey begins. Thank you for listening. And obviously, if you have any other questions about God, any other curiosities, because there are so many questions that we can ask, please comment, please let me know, and I can carry a further video on answering other questions related to God. Again, thank you for listening. And obviously, if you are interested in more videos, please subscribe.